So today we are going to cover part 3 of section 4, and we're going to learn how to factor trinomials. So at the beginning, we're going to do the easy trinomials where the a term is going to be equal to 1. And what I mean by the a term is the number that's in front of the x squared. So when your number is written in standard form, it should be ax squared plus bx plus c. So the first ones that we're going to factor, this number that'll be in front of x squared is going to be a 1. And I always call these the easy trinomials. So what we're going to do is find the factors of the last term that will sum to give us the middle term. A big hint here, if the last term is positive, then that tells me that both signs of my factors have to be the same, and they're going to match the sign of the middle term. If the last term in your trinomial is negative, in order to get a negative number when you multiply, the signs have to be different. So one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative, and the larger factor is going to have the sign of the middle. So let's take a look at my first example here. So I need to look for the factors of this last term. So all the ways to multiply to get a positive 12. Now, the thing to look at, remember, if that last number is positive, the signs are going to be the same on my factors. And the sign that both numbers will have is the sign of this middle. So I'm going to start listing my factors of 12. So I'm looking for two numbers that are going to multiply to give me positive 12, but the same two numbers that when I add them give me negative 7. So I'm going to go ahead and start listing my factors of 12. And again, I've already established that the signs have to be both negative. So negative 1 times negative 12, negative 2 times negative 6. I'm doing all the ways to multiply to get a positive 12. Negative 3 times negative 4. And I've listed everything here. Now, out of these three factors I just listed, I need to go back and figure out which one, when I add them, let me maybe pick a different color here. Maybe the black will show up. When I add them, which one of these will give me negative 7? This one gives me negative 13. This one gives me negative 8. And then finally, the last one, this is the combination of factors that give me the middle term. So what I'm going to do now is I create two binomials. Maybe I'll do it down here so it shows up better. The first spot here is the factors of the x squared. So I just put an x here and an x here. And then in this spot are the factors of the negative 12. And that's going to be the negative 3 and the negative 4. Now, it doesn't matter if you set your binomial up as x minus 4 first, x minus 3 second. So the key thing to do when you factor, if you do have additional time, I highly recommend you FOIL this back. And if it does not go back to your original problem, then either you've chosen the wrong factors or maybe the right factors but wrong signs. So I could do a quick check here. X times x is x squared. Outside gives me negative 3x. Inside negative 4x. Add, multiply the end. Add the middle. And it did go back to my original problem. So the correct answer here is either one of these. And again, the order that you write the two binomials doesn't matter. Pretty good. Try another easy trinomial. So this one has x squared plus 5x plus 6. Again, I need to figure out the last term is positive. So this tells me my signs need to be the same. And they're both going to have the sign in the middle, which is positive. So let me go ahead and list my factors of positive 6. until I find the one that will also add to give me 5. So again, we're looking for two numbers that multiply to give me 6, but who add to give me the middle. So my factors of 6 are going to be 1 and 6 and 2 times 3. And then if I go back and add them, this one gives me 7. This is the magic pair. It's going to be 2 and 3 because 2 times 3 is 6 and 2 plus 3 is 5. So I'll put those into the binomials. X is in the first spot, and then the two factors you just found. And again, remember you can FOIL to make sure it goes back. If you would have preferred to put the x plus 3 first and then the x plus 2, either one works. It doesn't matter the order. Let's try the next one. Notice this time my sign on that last term is negative. So when this is a negative number, this tells me the signs on my factors are different. Because when I multiply to get a negative, the signs have to be different, a negative times a positive. So again, I'm looking for two numbers that are going to multiply to give me negative 6, but who will add to give me negative 1. Now, when that last number is negative and you know your signs are different, the bigger factor gets the sign of the middle. So again, my factors of 6 are just 1 and 6, 2 and 3. But we already established the signs have to be different. And the bigger factor here, so out of this 1 and 6, my bigger factor is 6. It gets the middle sign. 2 and 3, the bigger factor is the 3. It gets the sign of the middle. Now when I go back and add these, 1 plus negative 6 is negative 5. 2 plus negative 3 is the negative 1 that I need. So now when I put them into my binomials, so 2 times negative 3 is negative 6, and then 2 plus negative 3 is negative 1. So set up your binomials. One's going to get positive 2. One gets negative 3. And again, the order doesn't matter. And these are the easy trinomials. Let's try another one. My last number here in my trinomial is positive. So this tells me my signs need to be the same. And the sign that they're both going to have is the sign of the middle. So I'm going to list my factors of 8. I can multiply to get an 8 with 1 times 8. Don't forget about that obvious one. And then 2 times 4. And again, we already established the signs need to be the same. And that sign of that middle term is negative. So both of these are negative. So now I have to look and see which one, when I add them, gives me the negative 6. This one gives me negative 9. This one is the one that I need. So my two factors are x minus 2, x minus 4. And I'm done. Again, always remember, you can FOIL this to double check that it is going back to the original problem. If it doesn't, go back and look for a different factor. Let's try the next one. 24 has a bunch of factors. What you can do is, if you don't want to list all of them, just start listing until you find the one that works. So for this one, I'm looking for factors of a negative 24. This tells me my signs are different. And the bigger number is going to have the sign in the middle, which is negative. So I have 1 times 24. Bigger factor here is negative because that's the sign in the middle. Notice this one gives. So I need to keep going because I need to get a negative 5. Then if I do 2 and negative 12, that gives me negative 10. Still not there yet. 3 and negative 8. And here we go. That's my magic combination. I could have kept going and done 4 times 6, but I don't need to because I already found the one that'll multiply to give me negative 24, but also when I add them, gives me that middle term of negative 5. So then here we do x minus 8 times x plus 3. And I'm done. Now, the next one, factors of 1, two numbers that'll multiply to give you 1, and there's only 1, it's only 1 times 1. But then if you add them, 1 plus 1, you get 2. So this one, you cannot factor. So you on your quiz, or actually on your test, if you get a question like this, you're just going to write in cannot factor. Some Algebra 1 classes teach you to write the word prime. Some of them make you rewrite the problem. So you might also see not factorable. Any of these answers would be acceptable on the test if I give you something that you can't factor. So just be aware, like on an SAT, if you get a question like this, that you might see the word prime, you might see cannot factor, not factorable, or they may just rewrite the problem. The next one, back to problems that we can actually factor. So the next one, we're looking for factors of negative 18 that when I combine them or add them, give me a negative 3. So the negative 18 tells me my signs are different. So let me start making my organized list. So 1 times 18. My sign in the middle is negative, so that tells me my 18 is going to be the negative number. And then 2 and 9. 9's negative. And again, if you want to combine these as you're going along, do that. So you don't go any further than you need to. Next one is 3. 3 and 6. And there we go. So the two factors are positive 3 and negative 6. So x plus 3, x minus 6. And you're done. Now, always what you should be doing on these is always look for a greatest common factor. But obviously, these were pretty simple. There wasn't any GCF here. So we were just straight jumping right into the factoring. The next one, factors of positive 2 that when you combine them give you a 3. So the factors of 2 would only be 1 times 2. And then when you add them, you get the 3. So this would be x plus 1, x plus 2. Believe it or not, the ones where you're going to use the factors where it's 1 times the number, sometimes are tricky for some students. They forget about the most simplest way to multiply to get a number. All right, so those were the easy ones. Here comes the fun part, where the number in front of x squared is not going to be a 1. So I'm going to teach you 2 different techniques to do this. Now, there are all kinds of cool tricks out there that help you to factor trinomials, but the problem with the tricks is students forget and they mix up the techniques. So if you're really good at looking at numbers and patterns and putting them together, you could use option 1, which is use trial and error or guess and test. What you're going to have to do is find the factors of the first term, find the factors of the last term, and find the combination that will give you the middle term. The problem with this technique is when the numbers are kind of large and you're looking through a whole bunch of factors, in order to confirm that you've picked the right ones, you got to do a bunch of FOIL problems, which might take a little bit of time. So for example, on this one, if you were guessing and testing, now when the numbers are small, it's not too bad. But when they get large, this one is a little bit more tedious. And if you're not good at recognizing the patterns right away, you're better off using the next technique I'm about to show you. But if you were going to guess and test or trial and error, what you need to do here is list the factors of the first term. And factors of 2 are just going to be 1 times 2. Then you have to list the factors of negative 15. So 1 and 15 and then 3 and 5. This one doesn't have too many, so it's not so bad. But now what you have to do is start putting these factors into the first spot of the binomial. So you would put the factors of the 2 right here. So I could put an x, and then I can put a 2x here. This isn't showing up very good. Let me do yellow. And then for the factors of the 15, they're going to go here. So let's say you first try 1 and 15. Now, obviously to get a negative 15, one of these has to be negative. So let's say you say this one's positive, this one's negative. Then what you have to do is confirm that outer and inner, when you multiply them, will give you a positive 1. So when I do the inside, I get 2x. When I do the outside numbers, I get negative 15x. Notice when you combine them, you get negative 13. So that guess is wrong. So now you got to go back. Try another way. So let's say instead of putting in the 1 and the 15, let's try the 5 and the 3. And again, you could have reversed the spot of the 1 and the 15. So let's say instead, I'm going to put the positive 3 here and the negative 5 here. And now again, you're going to FOIL it to see if it goes back. And again, you're mostly just doing outer and inner. So inside gives me 6x. Outside gives me negative 5x. Notice now when you combine these, you do get the positive 1x, which is in the middle. So you got lucky, we got the 2 factors. So this is the trial and error. You just start trying all the different combinations to get them to go in. Now I'm going to show you the technique that I like to do because it never fails. And what we're going to do is use the factor by grouping that we learned yesterday. So same problem as the previous slide where you were guessing and testing. Step number 1 is to multiply the first term with the last term. So I'm going to do 2x squared times negative 15. And this is going to give me negative 30x squared. Now, really, I'm just focusing on the negative 30. I'm looking for factors of negative 30 that when I combine them, give me the middle term. So the factors that'll give me a 1. So if I start my organized list, so I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to give me negative 30x squared, but the same 2 numbers that when I add them, give me a 1x, which is the middle. So let's start our list. And notice it's a negative 15, so this tells me my signs are going to be different, and the bigger number gets the sign of the middle. So I have 1 times 30, and the bigger number is the sign in the middle, so it's positive. So the smaller number gets the negative. And then when I add those, I get 29. So that one's not working. Then if I try 2, negative 2 times 15, well, that gives me 13, still not there. Negative 3 and 10, that gives me 7. Then 4 doesn't work, but 5 does. And notice when I add those 2, I get the positive one I'm looking for. Now, unlike what we did before when they were easy trinomials, we need to now take these factors and turn this trinomial into a 4-term polynomial. So what I'm going to do is take 2x squared plus x minus 15. I just rewrote the problem. Now what we're going to do is you're going to rewrite this. The first and the last terms stay the same. What we're going to replace is this middle with these 2 factors. And because remember, this was a negative 30x squared we wanted, so this both have x's with them. Now, it doesn't matter the order that you put them into your binomials. So I'm going to go ahead and put the negative 5x here and the positive 6x here. Now that I've turned it into a 4-term polynomial, I can factor by grouping. So I'm going to go ahead and make a group of the first two and then a group of the second two. And this is what we did yesterday. I need to find a greatest common factor of my pink group, and that's going to be x. So I'll put x on the outside, divide. My greatest common factor of my red group here is going to be 3. So plus 3, and then divide. Remember, when you factor by grouping, these two need to look the same. If they're not, then you did something wrong. And now I can write the 2x minus 5 once, the one that was the same. And then for my second binomial, I take these two numbers that are outside the parentheses, the two GCFs I divided by, and that's my second binomial. On these harder trinomials, I highly recommend you FOIL it to make sure you've got the signs in the right space and that you pick the right factors. So if I do a quick FOIL on this, 2x times x is 2x squared. The outside gives me positive 6x. Inside gives me negative 5x. And last gives me negative 15. Combine the middles, and I get the single x that I wanted, and it did go back to the beginning. So the factors I found right here are correct. Now, if you've learned a different way to factor these, I'm fine with whatever technique you want to use for factoring trinomials. Again, find something that works for you and stick with it. We will factor all year long. I recommend this way because it doesn't fail. Let's try the next example. Same thing. I'm going to stick to the factor by grouping. Now, this one's probably small enough where you probably could guess and test, because the only factors of 2 are 1 times 2, and the only factors of 3 are 1 times 3. So then it's just a matter of putting them in the right spot. But I'm going to factor by grouping. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply my first term with my last term, and that's going to give me the 6x squared. I'm going to be looking for factors of 6 that give me negative 5. Notice my last term was positive, so this tells me both of the signs on my factors need to be the same, and the signs that they'll both have is the sign of the middle. So factors of 6 are 1 and 6, 2 and 3. And because the middle sign is negative, they're both negatives. Now, I'll put x's with this because I'm looking for factors of the 6x squared. Now, we're going to turn our trinomial into the 4-term polynomial. Remember, the first term stays the same. And let me do a different color. Let's do it red. 2x squared. And that's still not showing up. Let me pick a different color. So the first term and the last term, you just rewrite them. Remember, you're replacing the middle with these two numbers you just found. And this one happens to be the negative 2x plus negative 3x, which gives you negative 5. So I'm going to put in here, and again, the order doesn't matter. Probably be tempted to put the two 2's next to each other and then the two 3's. But it won't matter. We're going to get the same answer either way. So now I'm going to make my groups. I'll make a yellow group here. That's sort of showing up. And then let me go back and get the pink. And then a pink group. Does that show up? Not really. Let's make a black group. All right. So my greatest common factor of this yellow is going to be 2x. So I put it out here, divide, and now my GCF of the black group, Remember, we want the signs to look the same. If I pull out a positive 3 GCF, my signs aren't going to match up. So I'm going to pull out a negative 3. And then I get x minus 1. Notice my two parentheses are the same. So that's my first factor, x minus 1. And then put these two terms together, the 2x minus 3. And you're done. Next one, we're going to do the same thing. Again, if you would prefer to just guess and test, list the factors of 27, factors of 2, figure out which ones work together by doing a bunch of FOIL problems, you can. But I'm going to do the factor by grouping technique. I'm going to multiply the beginning and the end, and I get negative 54x squared. So I need to start listing my factors of negative 54. So that would be, and signs are different. Notice the middle sign is negative. So my bigger factor in my list is going to be the negative. 1 times negative 54, 2 times negative 27. And I'm trying to make a 3, so I'm not there yet. 3 times negative 18, still not there yet. 4 won't work, 5 doesn't work, but 6 does. 6 times 9 is 54. So 6x times negative 9x will give me negative 54 when I multiply it, and when I add it, I get negative 3. So let's go ahead and put these two to replace the middle, and then rewrite the first and the last term. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite the 2x squared, rewrite the negative 27, and replace the middle with the two numbers I just found. And again, it doesn't matter how you put them in. If I wanted to put the negative 9x first, I could. I'm still going to get the same answer. So let me make my groups. Got my yellow group here, and then I'll make a black group. So the greatest common factor of my yellow group is going to be 2x. After I divide, I get x plus 3. Now, for the black group, you might be tempted to pull out a positive 9, but again, it won't make that parenthesis match. So I'm going to pull out a negative 9 GCF. And now I can group. I'll put my thing that's the same, the x plus 3. You can go ahead and write that. And then put the two numbers that you just divided by, the two GCFs you found, together in the second parentheses. And you're done. Let's try 2 more examples, and we are done. Pretty good here. All right, next. Now, always remember, check to see if there's a GCF. There isn't. This one's kind of big once I multiply this. So I'm still going to do the same technique. I'm going to multiply this times this. So 8x squared times 18 gives me 144x squared. So I'm going to list the factors of 144. And notice both signs are positive. So this tells me both signs on my factors will be positive. So I have 1 times 144. That doesn't work because that gives me 145. And then if I do 2 times 72, that doesn't work. It doesn't give me 51. But then if I do 3, try to divide 144 by 3, that gives me 48. And then when I add them, I get the 51x. So these are my two factors that I need to use. I'm replacing these two with the middle. So rewrite the first one, the 8x squared, rewrite the last one, and replace the middle with those two factors. And again, the order you put them in doesn't matter. So if you want to put the 48 first, you can. Or you could put the 3 first. I'll go ahead and put the 3 first. So my GCF, make a group here, and I'll make a group here. My greatest common factor of my first group is just an x. And then I'm left with 8x plus 3. Now my GCF of my second group here, this one's going to be 6. So divide, you get 8x plus 3. Notice these guys were the same, which is what we wanted. So you write that once, and then group these two together. And that's your second binomial. And again, if you have time, you FOIL it and make sure it goes back. Now, one habit we're going to get into with these trinomials, and technically you don't have to, but again, because we are going to be factoring all year long, and we're going to be getting quadratic equations that we're going to need to graph and find x-intercepts. So when you're asked to find the x-intercepts or the zeros or the roots, we want to leave our leading coefficient here, that a term, positive. So in order to do that, I'm going to factor out a greatest common factor of -1. So I'm going to divide everything by -1 to make that x squared term positive. It's going to help us later on in the school year. I could factor it the way it was, but again, we want good habits, so we're going to get rid of it. All right, so now, once I pulled out the -1, now I start the process of multiplying the first and the last. I get -18x squared, and I got to start listing those factors until I find the combination that gives me -17. So this tells me because it's negative, my signs are different. And right away, it's going to be the first factor. It's actually going to be the +1 and -18. So this will replace the middle. So again, don't forget about your GCF you pulled out. So I'm going to rewrite the first term, the 6x squared. I'm going to replace the middle with the two factors I just found. And then rewrite the last term. So that goes there. And now I make my groups. So I'll make a green group here, yellow group here. So my greatest common factor of green is going to be 6x. So I'm going to divide this one by 6x and this one by 6x. Then after I divide, I'm left with x minus 3. The yellow group, at first glance, you're going to be like, well, there's nothing. But we can't put nothing, so my GCF is 1. So +1 here, and then the answer, you just rewrite it. And now we're going to put the two things that were the same, so the x minus 3's. And then now you'll put the two GCFs you found, the 6x plus 1. And don't forget about that -1 that you pulled out from the very beginning. And you're done. And that is it, I believe, for the factoring of the trinomials. Now, section 4 actually has a little bit more to it. It's the P4D. We were going to include it on the test, but since we moved the test up, the factor completely will not be on the test. However, when we covered the difference of two squares factoring, there were a couple examples we did where you had to pull a GCF out first. That's basically what you have to do when you factor completely, is you're looking always for a GCF first, and then you factor what remains. However, the only thing you'll have to know as far as factor completely is when it's a difference of two squares. So this is it for the trinomials. Your homework is the P4C. And then also on Canvas is the test review as well as the solution file. So you can start looking at that. And then if you have questions, tomorrow's the day to ask, because tomorrow's the last time I will see you before you take your test on Tuesday. So we'll go through that review. I'll bring up any things that maybe you have questions on and cover that. Any questions now?